three loves. There's the love of God, there's the love of Torah, and there's the love of Israel. These three loves can be seen as three separate paths to connect to God. So there are people that love Torah, that their passion, their enthusiasm, their energy is directed to studying, maybe to studying and teaching, but they don't actually have a great feeling for a fellow Jew. In fact, in the Lubavitcher Rebbe memoirs, one of his very powerful stories is about a great Torah scholar who would spend maybe 16 to 18 hours a day studying, and he did it in the shul in a side room where he was undisturbed. There was a library. And the Rebbe writes the story that once a beloved figure of the community had some type of either a stroke or a heart attack, whatever it was, he was found outside in the marketplace. They carried him into the shul. They called the village doctor, which didn't do much. And essentially, the people were praying to Hashem that he should recover. He was really very well liked, and his family was there. And this Torah scholar saw this as an intrusion. He understood the importance of prayer. He understood why they were in the shul, and yet he could not feel part of it. And in the memoirs, it says he was actually quite relieved that after 2 days, there was a great miracle and he somehow recovered. Now, this, I think we could relate to, but it's also something that shows a great deficiency. He loves Torah, but he doesn't really have a great love for a fellow Jew. Then there are those people that have great love for a fellow Jew. I mean, they're the type of people that we really appreciate. When you need a favor, when you need someone to do something, when you need someone to be concerned, these are the people. They have what we call a heart of gold, but they're not into rituals and they're certainly not into Torah study. And finally, there's those that excel in loving God. I mean, when they pray, they're really praying. They are talking to Hashem, and they feel it. And many times they're almost, well, sometimes you use the expression, they're spaced out. They actually are thinking about their Creator, which is beautiful. They love God, but they're not there to help others. Now, these are three separate loves. And as I mentioned, some people excel in one, some people excel in two. But the Rebbe points out, and this is what he said the first time, our holy Rebbe, the seventh Rebbe of Chabad, Rabbi Schneerson, when he took over the leadership of the Chabad movement, he said they're actually one. It's not possible to love Torah without loving God. You cannot love God without loving a Jew. You cannot love a fellow Jew without loving Torah and God, etc. So we have these three loves. I'm going to transfer to the second floor because they're working. So we have these three loves which are actually one. The Hayom Yom, the Rebbe's thought was that the young people have to go out and use these three loves to inspire their fellow Jews. Now, there's two things that the Rebbe was very involved in. When we talk about the young people going out, the emphasis is young people. We often look at the more experienced, the more mature, the more accomplished professional. One of the worst words that are used today in Judaism is the outreach professional. The Rebbe said, no, what we need is innocence. What we need is truth. And we need enthusiasm. And what professionalism can do can be undone as well. But truth And enthusiasm has a way of permeating hearts and minds where professionalism does not. So the Rebbe said that the youngsters, and not necessarily only in years, but in character, youngsters should go out without differentiating between one group and another and share these three loves. And this is another thing. One of the interesting differences between the younger, in italics, and the more mature or professional is the professional knows where he's not going to be successful. But the youngster who has never really experienced defeat, hasn't had too many setbacks in his life, thinks he could do anything. And of course, the older, more mature, seasoned person sort of laughs at his innocence. He really thinks that he'll be so successful. But you'll notice an amazing thing when it comes to Yiddishkeit. If you use your professional expertise, and I asked you, well, I'm living in the Bay Area, okay? Or I'm in the Northern California. And I asked you, okay, so how successful do you think a young Hasidic family will be in Petaluma or San Francisco, whatever? If you ask the professionals, they tell you, well, based on how many people give to the JCC or to the UJA, the Federation, it's going down. We're looking at the beautiful synagogues that are here. The membership is going down. It seems to us that we have to think of something creative, maybe offer more this, offer more that, because we're losing people every day. There's a lot of apathy. And that's a professional opinion. Sadly, six-figure amounts of money have gone into coming to that conclusion. And then this Hasidic family with their little baby come to a town. They know no one. Maybe they know one or two indirectly. And they just start doing their thing. Well, what is their thing? What do they offer that no one else offers? They don't have a JCC. They don't have a gym. They don't have entertainment. They're not necessarily the most good-looking people on earth or the most charismatic. So what can they offer? What they offer is truth. What they offer is enthusiasm. They offer passion. They offer a reason to live. And to everyone's amazement, little by little, as it says elsewhere, where there's light, people began to gather. So that's what the Rebbe says. Let them go out, the youngsters, with their navete, with the three loves. Don't sell Torah, don't sell God, and don't try to merchandise loving a fellow Jew. Just do all of them. Just present it as a truth. These are three loves, and you could excel in all three or in one of the three, but they're all intertwined. Then finally, the question is, how long should you do this? Because all of us, I don't know the statistics. Maybe some of you know how many restaurants fail within the first 2 years, or how many to elevate the conversation, how many marriages fail, so to speak, within the first 2 years or the first X amount of years? Many. But the Rebbe says that when it comes to Yiddishkeit, when it comes to Judaism, there's no such thing as a failure, because we have a covenant. The covenant means that there's an assurance, a divine assurance, that when a person works or when a person presents Yiddishkeit with truth, then it will have an effect. It can have an immediate effect. It can have an effect over years. But there's no such thing as it's a failure. Why? because the heart of the Jewish people is collectively open. So, I mean, it was this with this type of a can-do attitude that the Rebbe took over his leadership in 1950, and actually started his leadership much earlier with his father-in-law, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe of blessed memory. And this is what he wrote down in this book, which I shared with you just now, a little partial understanding of his profound thought. Every one of us are youngsters in Yiddishkeit. None of us are really seasoned professionals when it comes to loving God. We're still learning. We're still learning Torah. We're just beginning it. And certainly, no matter how good-natured we are, and I'm sure we all are, and how charitable, etc., there's always so much more to love your neighbor like yourself. So we're all young in that sense. And we should take our young, I'll use the word nabate, our lack of sophistication, and go out and present to someone Yiddishkeit. You know, what often stops us from people like me all the way in the same spectrum going one way or the other way is, who am I to say to a person or to present to a person a certain way of Jewish living when I myself am not consistent with this? Or I myself, I know my deficiencies. And the answer is, why are you putting your deficiencies on someone else? What you're saying is true. What you're saying is not only correct, but you're obligated to say it, and you're saying it because of love. You love God, so you want God's children to respond to him. You love the Torah, so therefore you want the Torah to be fulfilled. And most of all, you love your fellow Jew, and you want his goodness. You want his success. And for a Jew, true success will be when he does what is correct, what is his true life's mission, which is Yiddishkeit. Okay, anyway, very beautiful. That's the Rebbe's thought for today. Let's do a little Tanya, because if I tell you the other one, the reason why I say second is because we have 2 months of Adar. So the Hayom Yom, the day but for day inspiration, is written for 2 months. Okay. We started yesterday, Iggeret Hakodesh, the holy letter of the Rebbes, of the Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe of Chabad. It's opposite page 202, page Kuf Chaf. And the beginning of the letter started with, I have heard, that this is the Alter Rebbe talking, I have heard the good news that in this and that communities of the Hasidim have girded themselves with strength to do good things. They study the Torah, they study the complete Torah. And we spoke yesterday a little bit about the Gemara, the Talmud. And what they do is every year they finish the Talmud. And as we spoke yesterday, you have to be quite a scholar and very dedicated to finish the entire Talmud every year. However, when you do it with others, and each one collectively says, I'll do my part, you do your part, together we will lift this heavy burden, or we will carry this heavy burden, then everyone gets a share in the fulfillment of carrying it. So that's what the Rebbe says. Now the Rebbe is going to get into something very profound, and that is how the Torah gives us strength. Before we get into this, let me just mention that the very famous, beautiful poem that we sing Friday night, which is really a poem that extols the Jewish woman, and we call it the Eishes Chaya, right? The woman of valor, who can find her, who can describe her, etc. It was written by King Solomon, by Shlomo HaMelech, and it's not limited to the acknowledgement of the Jewish woman on earth. It's also a praise that, as if to say, God gives either the Jewish people, which we spoke about yesterday, which can be likened to a spouse, or at times it's referring to Torah, that the Torah is the spouse of the Jewish people. So it's a beautiful description of a remarkable woman, either referring to the Jewish people or referring to your wife or mother or sister, perhaps, or it's referring to the Torah, and actually it's referring to all of them. So in that poem, the description of this remarkable Jewish woman is that she girds, she ties her thighs or her loins with strength. In a very practical way, you know, if you're wearing an apron, right, and it's flapping around, it's not going to protect your dress or your pants unless you actually tie it. If you're wearing a robe, it has to be belted, right? And in many of the cultures, people would wear often, before they left their home, they would strap on, whether it be a money belt, perhaps something in the Wild West comes to mind, you know, a pistol, or maybe in a place where they would put a dagger. It could be decorative, it doesn't have to be for war, but essentially putting something around you and girding it, you know, strengthening it, sort of strengthen the body, and now you're ready to go out and you're ready to face the world. Until you belt, tie, gird, you're sort of not ready to face the outside. And you're inside, you're comfortable without it being tied tightly, but from outside, you have to have your belt belted. We know that this idea, on a very practical level, is it separates the thigh when you put a belt around it, right? Is actually literally making a separation between your upper half and your bottom half. Now, of course, it's not literally half because not all of us are so well proportioned, but there's the upper part of you, which primarily has your heart, right, your liver, and the upper part of you, which has more correctly your face, which has has the brain, it has the 4 of the 5 senses, etc. And then there's the lower part in italics, which is more similar to the animal world, which is digestion and getting rid of waste, and then physically propelling yourself to go from one place to another. In those areas, the animal world and the human world is very, very similar. Procreation as well, very, very similar. However, when we talk about the head, feelings, right, conscience, aesthetics, over here, clearly, the human is in a world which is completely separate than the animal. So what separates the area between this and the other? It's the thigh area, is really where we have this change. When you gird that area, we're making a very clear demarcation. And I preceded this statement with the statement that when you gird yourself, you're ready to go outside, you're like strengthened. So now we could read the poetry of King Solomon, Shlomo HaMelech, that all of us are familiar with because we do it every Friday night, with the words that the woman of valor, she's remarkable, chagra ba'ez masneha. She girds her thighs or her loins with strength. Now, one line before that, what did the Rebbe say? That the Torah is called strength, and in particular the oral tradition, which today is Mishnayos, Talmud, and everything else. But the written Torah, the oral tradition, the oral Torah is what gives the Jewish people strength. Now it says that she wraps herself with strength. So 1, 2, 3, 4, around 8 lines from the top. Pirish Shlomo HaMelech Olav Shalom. Shlomo HaMelech, upon him is peace, taught Chagra Ba'ez Masnea Chuli, she girds her with strength her loins. Masnayim Him Dover Hamamid Kol Haguf. Actually, it's your feet, it's the muscles in your thighs, etc., that's able to have your body standing erect. So it's Hamaimit Kol Haguf Im Hareish Hanitzov Emen Aleim. If you have the proper posture, so you're in the proper alignment, it's that midpoint which actually connects the upper with the lower, so you are able to go, to stand, and to be healthy. And it's the thighs, or I think it's always translated as loins, but it's that area which begins the area which can bring you to where you want to go. So obviously, if you're sitting and you have a mind and you're surfing and you want to go somewhere, you're not going to be there, even though your mind is thinking about it and involved with it. So you actually have to get up and walk. You need your need your feet. You need all of the muscles and the bones from your thigh downwards to get there. So in this case, we need something to be wrapped around the mosnayim, something wrapped around the loins, in order to give us the strength so we might be able to go. So we'll do 2-3 more lines and we'll continue tomorrow with God's help. Just like it is in terms of physicality, so too it is as well, spiritually speaking, with your godly soul. In other words, for your godly soul to propel you, to bring you to where you want to go, you need to be strengthened. You need to be girded. You have to make sure that your thighs are capable of bringing you somewhere. What is that? That's ha'amuna ha'amitis b'Hashem echad ein sof baruch hu. That is your true faith in the one God who is without an end, blessed be He. The Ihu, that He is, mamali kol amim, He fills creation, sevav kol amim, He transcends and surrounds creation. Beles asar panu minei, there is nowhere where He is not. There's nowhere where there's a void. Lamayla aden kates ulamata aden tachlis, going all the way upwards from one level to another. Wherever there is existence, there is God. Ulamata aden tachlis, and so too it is below. So if one could imagine, and one maybe shouldn't imagine because it's so scary, but imagine first a beautiful world, and then an ugly world, and then even a place of evil, and then even a place of death and destruction, etc., etc. There is nowhere where God is not. V'chein l'dalet sitrin, and so too also, when we talk about directions, the 4 sides, v'chenes ein sof mamish. So in order to give us, I see it's late already. In order to give us the concept of strength that we might fulfill our destiny, we need to gird ourselves with faith in God. And over here, it's interesting how the Rebbe describes what are we supposed to believe in? In other words, what commitment do we need in order for our godliness to have an effect over our animal nature? Or to put it a little bit differently, what ideas about God, what ideas do we require in order for us to be able to accomplish in this world as a Jew? And the answer is faith. Faith in what? Faith in God. What does that mean, faith in God? And how the Rebbe is so detailed over here. So I'm just going to start the discussion. When me and you live an ordinary life, and we ask ourselves honestly, do we believe, do we affirm God? And we might answer, of course. What's the question? Of course I believe in God. And then you ask yourself, you challenge yourself. If I truly believed in God, then why am I so easily frustrated? Why am I so easily frightened? I mean, if God is holding my hand, euphemistically speaking, or to put it in a human term, if I'm surrounded by security, very fine security, would I be frightened of a dog across the street that's barking? Of course not. First of all, it's across the street. Second, it's only barking. It's only a dog. And even if it was a meshugana dog, I got security. I mean, what am I worried about? Now, kaviyachol, as if to say, I believe in Hashem, so that means I have security. So why am I frightened of a barking dog? I'll never forget this, and I recall actually sharing it with you. Many, many, many years ago, when I would be, even before I was married, on Simchas Torah, which is the happiest day when we dance with the Torah, the seventh Rebbe of Chabad, our Rebbe would encourage the Hasidim to go to other shuls and dance with them, bring joy to them, and then come back to home, come back to 770 Eastern Parkway, and continue the celebration with the Rebbe. In the past, I've touched upon it. I mean, I could spend hours just describing how I grew up and how I know others grew up, etc. But it was quite challenging. And some of the places that we visited was only a half-hour walk. This particular story that happened with me and three of my friends, I don't remember all the details. It's been such a long time ago, but it was at least an hour and a half walk one way. It's holiday. You can't take any public transportation. An hour and a half walk the other way. And of course, when we came to the synagogue, we would sing and dance and do the dancing. And then after all of that strenuous exercise, we would spend the rest of the night and much of early morning celebrating with the Rebbe, dancing nonstop. And all of us received energy from the Rebbe himself. It was like once you might have been really tired, but when you came at the 770, it was packed. You could barely move. And the Rebbe walked in. It was like literally everyone somehow got a battery charge. It was like a resurgence of joy. And then when the Rebbe would move his hands, and anyway, extraordinary, miraculous times. Now it looks like miraculous. In those days, it was just natural. The Rebbe was there and things happened. So I remember we were walking back. It was around 12:30 at night, not in a very good neighborhood, not very safe. Going, we had a police escort because a couple of hundred people were walking to the same direction. And then from there, they split off to 50, 60 different synagogues. But on the way back, everyone walked when they finished. And I was only walking with maybe 3 to 5 people. And I remember we were walking, again, not the best neighborhood. And it was residential, this particular block. And I was walking close to the hedges of a house, and there was a dog there. I didn't see it because it was behind the hedge. And just as I was about to go past it, it began to bark, and I literally jumped. I don't know if it was 4 inches off the ground, but I literally, I was so startled. And and then I remember what my friend told me. He looked at me, he said, Ari, didn't you say in the prayer, do not be frightened from a sudden fright? And I remember the congruence. Yes, of course, I say 3 times a day after the Elena, we even sing it in the Chabad traditions, do not be frightened of something sudden. Ki imanu kel, for God is with us. And yet, it's 12:30 or 12 o'clock, whatever it was, a dog barked. I was in no danger. It was behind the hedge, and I don't think it was singling me out. It was just a quiet area, and now a bunch of people were walking, so it's a guard dog. And yet I literally jumped. And then, of course, with something like that, you're just reminded of the dissonance between here I say, here I believe, and yet it has no effect, so to speak, in real life. So when a person says, I believe in Hashem, what do you believe? Oh, I believe he created creation. I believe he's watching over me. All of that is right. What you're really supposed to reach the level is, I believe in Hashem because he's here. I believe that God is here now, present with me. There is no place where he is not, whether I'm in my protected home or whether I'm in business, whether I'm walking, whether I'm driving. Hashem is with me. That level of consciousness is a practical demonstration of faith. So yeah, we start with basics. Absolutely, we start with I believe in Hashem, that not only that he exists, but that he's creating existence. But it's beautiful words, beautiful concepts, but does it have an effect that when I hear the barking dog, my heart does not beat faster? If it doesn't have that effect, then I know I have to work on my faith. There's a very telling story, and one of probably hundreds, of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. The previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, who lived in Tsarist Russia before, of course, of the revolution, was often told by his father, who was the 5th Rebbe of Chabad, that he has to do certain things which literally, this is without exaggeration, that put him in jeopardy. And one time he had to go visit some high dignitary that was part of the government to intercede that something negative should be taken away. The only time you could get to this person was if he was in his own dacha, and the dacha was in a place where Jews did not live. And of course, his palace almost was surrounded. He had wild dogs to guard him. To make the long story short, the previous Rebbe, who risked his life constantly to save and to be of assistance to his fellow Jews, had to stay somewhere far. And then when it came time for the appointment, it's pitch dark. He started to walk towards the house. Of course, there are dogs. I was not there. I'm assuming there was barking and this and that. Anyway, finally, he gets to the house. When he gets to the house and the servant sees him and he brings him into this dignitary, this nobleman looks at him, aristocracy, and says, I don't understand how your father has no heart. You're an only child, and he sent you to visit me at night, and I have dogs that are to guard me. These dogs people are frightened of, and yet he seemed to be heartless. This is from, I would never say words like this, but this is what the guy said. Your father is heartless. He risked your life. Maybe you'll get to me. And one of the things that's recorded, the previous Rebbe told over the story, one of the things that the previous Rebbe told him was, a dog is frightened of a Jew. A Jew is not frightened of a dog. Now, the previous Rebbe could say that. I obviously cannot say that. I don't know how many of you could say that. When you see a dog that's barking and it's coming towards you, it is prudent, very prudent, to stop and say to yourself, what is the proper way I should do? Should I stay still? Whatever it might be. It's a danger. But when a person has absolute, unconditional, unwavering faith that God is with him, he has security. What's he scared? He's scared of a dog? Yeah, the dog is making a lot of noise. The dog has teeth. The dog might be trained, God forbid, to attack, but I'm doing a mitzvah. God is with me. A dog should be frightened of me, not the other way around. So the Rebbe then talks, and we'll talk more about this tomorrow, but and I'll probably repeat the words. When he describes faith in God, he doesn't say faith that he exists, faith that he's here, faith that he fills creation, faith that he's beyond creation. No matter how spiritual you go, there's always God. No matter how opposite the spiritual you go, there's only God. You look in east, west, north, south, what is there? There's the presence of Hashem. That aspect of believing and having faith and trust in God's presence gives strength. That's the girding of the loins that can help connect the mind, the heart, the soul to do what it has to do, which is to serve Hashem in this world. Okay, it's nearly 9 o'clock. Let me wish you a terrific day. You know, people say good morning, right? They're wishing you good morning. I wish you a good morning, a good day, successful. God willing, at noon, we'll probably do something about the parsha, maybe a mitzvah. And until then, shalom, shalom.